is the latest film from director Robert Zemeckis. It stars Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, so three of them together. It's a bit of a Forrest Gump reunion. How about that? And also, the co-writer on this movie is Eric Roth, who also had a hand in writing the adaptation for the Forrest Gump movie. So it's a Forrest Gump reunion all around. How about that? And this movie takes place entirely in one spot. You track it from the beginning of time with the dinosaurs all the way to present day. You see the neighborhood building up around it and the house that is surrounding the camera. You are stuck in this room seeing different families coming in, and you experience life and these moments through them in this one spot. The camera never moves. Let's just dive into it. Robert Zemeckis is a filmmaker who has made some incredible films. We already mentioned Forrest Gump before, makes me ugly cry every time. Back to the Future is incredible, very well done. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of my favorites from childhood. Yes, the scene with Christopher Lloyd that is always shared as like nightmare fuel. Yeah, that got me as a kid, and I loved it. I loved that movie so much. Death Becomes Her is fun. Fuck you. Castaway, another one with him and Tom Hanks, is really well done as well. Flight, in recent years, you have Flight with Denzel Washington. Very good, very underrated Zemeckis, as well as The Walk a couple years after that. That being said, when it comes to like a recent Zemeckis, it's almost like you gotta cross your fingers for him. So it's like, okay, I got a Flight, that's good. The Walk, all right, that's good. And then for every good movie that you get from him lately, you'll get The Witches remake, which you might not even be able to watch anymore because I think that was one of the HBO Max tax write-off movies. Or you might get Disney's Pinocchio movie, which went straight to Disney+. It's kind of hit or miss with him. And one of the things that definitely I don't think necessarily helps his career as far as like, you know, the output of like good movies, or at least just general consensus well-regarded movies, is this obsession with like kind of pushing technology in cinema forward. But he has done that before. You know, I don't want to take that away from him. There's definitely moments in his earlier films where he's clearly pushing the boundaries of what cinema and the, you know, visual effects technology can do for it. But that being said, it's almost like it became an obsession. I remember as a child, it was one of the last couple days of like elementary school before like holiday break, and they were announced like, we're just gonna watch a couple movies today. I think it might have been the last day in that instance. So they were like, all right, one of them is The Polar Express. And me as a child, I was like, oh. I've never really been a fan of that movie. I know some people consider it a holiday classic. Good on ya, it's never really been for me. And that movie, I feel like, is the reason why I have like been like fearful of like checking out something like Beowulf or the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol movie, because I know it's just that technology. And it's like, I don't really like his style of all CG animated films. You know, we've seen a lot of great CG animated films with different styles or just different approaches that look fantastic, but his are just always so off-putting and weird to me. So when it came to this movie, you know, the premise being we're going through life, and because we have these actors, you know, we're gonna have to take them years back, so they will have to be de-aged. It was like, oh god, this is like visual effects, you know, experimental, like Zemeckis mode written all over it. This could go south in so many different ways. I really was not excited for this movie just based off of that alone. I know this is based off of a graphic novel, so I was kind of like, I don't know how faithful it will be to that, but really, storytelling-wise, I don't think that's going to be the big issue here. I think it's going to all ride on how they handled the visual effects, because they were incorporating like a new, like, you know, quick learning generative AI kind of tool on set, which was you film them with the camera, and then on the monitor, like in the moment, no post-production needed, you can see them already de-aged, which is, I guess, pretty helpful as far as like seeing like how it looks on the day. Like, okay, this is what it's going to look like, and performance-wise, here's what we can maybe do to, you know, improve and help the technology as well. But still, my hesitations were still there. I was like, I don't know. I would love to love this. You know, it seems like this could be a cool thing, but I don't know. But we got some talented people here. So let's talk about this de-aging really quick. It's not as distracting and off-putting as I feared. Obviously the limitations are there. Like, there's a few instances where it kind of becomes like Dial of Destiny, you know, young Harrison Ford, but old-ass Harrison Ford vocals matched with the character, but that only happens like every once in a while, and I only really noticed it with Tom Hanks because he would do like that like gravel that he kind of has now. But that aspect is not that bad. Even like the faces themselves, I think it helps that because the camera's in one spot, and it's kind of like in an awkward part of like this house that they're in, the characters are like kind of further away from the camera. Every once in a while they'll get close so you can get some kind of sense of like a close-up shot, but that's not very often. So maybe it's like, okay, if you push the de-aging a little further away, it might be less noticeable. But it never looked as bad to me as like when like even Martin Scorsese used the technology for The Irishman, and like the first shot you see of de-aged De Niro, you're not looking at like Taxi Driver De Niro recreated right before your eyes. It's old man De Niro with his wrinkles all removed, smooth ass skin with dyed hair. And it's like, oh, that looks terrible. That's one movie where it's like, I can't tell if the de-aging actually gets better or if I just got so used to just looking at these images, I'm just like, well, it doesn't look as bad as how it did when it first started. So I would say, the visual effects side of this, what I was most fearful for, actually turned out to not be that bad for me. My eyes are like always looking for that if I know it's there, so it's another thing to kind of get over. But, for me, always looking and trying to eye it up, not that bad. I was surprised to find out, though, that the thing that I wasn't that nervous about, the storytelling, that became the biggest hindrance on this entire film. Pretty early on, you realize that this is going to take like a non-linear approach to the storytelling. So you start off in one place and then you bounce around. It's not even you're bouncing around with one storyline, you're bouncing around through time, through history, with other families that are or have been living here. And that's part of why this idea, seems so appealing to so many people. I mean, you never really think about how, like, you see houses that, like, stay for years and years and years, but families move in and out, and they all have different lives. They all share different moments, and they all are alive during different times of, our world history. And exploring that, in this way is genuinely like a really great idea. That's probably why they were so attached to adapting the graphic novel in the first place. So I feel like it makes sense at first, if you're just hearing about it, to do like a non-linear approach to the storytelling, because you can, match stuff up like, hey, it's kind of interesting how this is happening here, and then this something kind of similar or something thematic kind of happened in another point in time that connects them, connects us through time, whatever. There's not really a lot of moments like that in the movie. There's only one part, and it's like for a gag, where they flash back to something that's happening in like the 1700s, sometime there. And then they cut back to like 1990, sometime there. And it's like, it's a connection thing. It's for a joke. That's the only time where the editing and the story structure itself actually lends itself to a non-linear style. Everything else feels kind of borderline random, or if there is like some connection there, it's not really properly implemented. It's not nearly as fleshed out. That's the thing also, is because they're juggling so many storylines. It's not just the Tom Hanks, Robin Wright family. It's so many other families throughout the years, but it really is just relegated to moments, never fully fleshed out subplots, no like full character arcs with anyone else. Like, you'll drop in on one family and then, we skip around, come back to them, and something has happened off screen that is horrible, and then skip around, and then you realize, oh, that was the end of that subplot. I have not seen those characters again, and the movie's over. So it's like, what was... I understand, the idea is to do this, but what was the point if I'm not getting anything out of here? Like, I am not really caring for any of these characters. Something that seemed like a good idea at first, too, is, they start to show, like, an all-black family that is living in the house. And there's one part where they cut to a scene where the parents are talking to their son about how to deal with a police officer if they get pulled over, which is something obviously we have not been seeing with the all-white families that have been living there. And it was that moment where I was like, see, this is something we can go off of if you want to explore this family a lot more. And it's not like something like that happens later in the film. There's no other tragedy that like befalls them other than their nurse dies of COVID, which they don't seem to be that torn up about at the end of the day also. Like, they're not even really subplots. They're just like distraction. Like, they're borderline like Family Guy-esque cutaway gags, but no one sets up a gag to cut away to. You know what I mean? There's only one instance where I was like, I'm genuinely entertained by this one couple. It's like this husband inventor who's like inventing the lazy boy chair, and his wife, and it was like, I'm only really like entertained by these guys popping up because they're just always so on and fun and just like so flirty. They're on the verge of fucking any chance they get, while he's also describing, we're really winning here. You cut around to all these other subplots and none of them are like winning. And then you cut to these two who at first glance you might not suspect being on top of like the economic food chain or anything like that. But it was fun. It was just fun to have some kind of like life, you know. These are like, it would be a good jumping off point for like a whole other movie. These characters, like, these are characters I would like to follow. Too bad we don't really see much of them. So you might be thinking like, oh, well, they're saving all the good stuff for the Tom Hanks main story. And yeah, it gets the most time, but I would even say during those moments, it's like they're still jumping ahead to points. And I'm like, what's been happening in between? Like, what's going on with these other things? And it's just like, ooh, it's not a really great narrative flow. And at a certain point, I kind of got tired of like the transition edits that they would do. And it seems like they're trying to honor the graphic novel in this way. They're putting up little boxes, like a character is now in this room because we're about to do a full transition to this other scene, or we're just going to highlight a specific item, you know, something like that. Even that kind of got on my nerves after a bit, especially when they would do these weird, like, not even like the boxing transitions. It's like just a weird like wipe they would do. And it's like, God, I would just take just a jarring abrupt cut at this point. Like, even that wasn't really coming together for me at all. It has like this sweeping schmaltzy score by Alan Silvestri, and look, it's Alan Silvestri. The music's good. But like, in this context, I feel like this would have been much better maybe without a score. You know, it's a slice of life. You're watching stuff happening, playing out, you know, you're watching life happen. So maybe cut out the music, maybe don't do nonlinear, just have it play out, you know, just see how things are changing over time, you know, instead of like cutting from here and then we're going back to here and blah, 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 blah. I honestly, I do not think this kind of approach to the storytelling worked at the end of the day, and that was my biggest disappointment walking out of this film when I least expected it. Now, here's the thing about the acting. Tom Hanks, if I had to make a list, I don't know if he would be number one, but he is one of my favorite actors of all time. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I put him at number one. I'd have to really think about it if I wanted to, and I don't want to put, you know, beautiful people against each other. That's mean. But Tom Hanks is up there. He can make anything work. I have cried during so many of his movies, whether he's on screen or whether he's just providing a voice. He is so talented, and he's just one of those performers you want to always see more of. He never gives a bad performance, even if he's maybe not in the best movie. So in this movie, once again, he is very good, and he's consistent. He's just consistently really good. Everyone else around him, unfortunately, it feels like they have gotten like the weirdest direction from Zemeckis. I feel like Zemeckis and Hanks, maybe because they've worked the most together, so they have this kind of trust. So Zemeckis is like, okay, he's got this and he knows what he's doing. So Tom Hanks just does what he always does, which is, you know, be great. But everyone else, it seems like, I don't know, like sometimes Robin Wright even, who is another fantastic actress, and she's mostly good in this, but there are parts where it seems like she's unsure about the line she's currently saying. And it's like, is some of this improv? I wouldn't think so, but maybe it kind of comes across that way. It's kind of this weird chemistry. Paul Bettany, who is usually fantastic, there are some points where he has to get like really angry. And it was kind of more laughable and a little embarrassing, you know, all around. Like, I was not really, you know, in tune with that performance. It was not clicking with me. It's almost like they thought they were in like a soap opera or like something melodramatic, kind of like that. So it's not like they're at the top of their game. It doesn't feel very naturalistic, despite the fact that the framing of the movie probably should lend itself to a bit more of that feeling. It also, I guess, doesn't help that a lot of the dialogue is very obvious, and some of the attempts at jokes don't really land for me. Like, there's maybe a couple moments where it's like, okay, whatever, that's a chuckle worth a bit. Nothing is as funny as the lazy boy couple, as mentioned before. By the time the end of the movie rolls around, it's not like they went out on like a triumphant note, but it's not like they really went out on a whimper either. It was just kind of more of like, you know, like just a fizzle, you know, just kind of faded away, and I wasn't really feeling anything, despite, once again, the schmaltzy, you know, dramatic score from Alan Silvestri. And what's a bummer about it is that it's kind of the setup, this final scene, the setup for something to really tug at your heartstrings and really land home for you, and it just kind of didn't. Like I said, I cried during so many Tom Hanks movies. Forrest Gump, which this is being touted as like the reunion of, you know, with these certain talented individuals. You know, Forrest Gump is one of those movies that has me ugly crying so many times when I see it, right? And I could not get there. There's plenty of points where they try to insert like that drama, that like raw emotion, and it just never comes across to me. And that's kind of a shame. I want to give props for them for trying. This is definitely like an experiment to see if they could do it. I just don't think it was that successful. The visual effects, de-aging stuff, I was not as taken aback by as much as I thought I would be. the costume design and like the set design they would do to like make up the room for like changing of the seasons or when the different families come in. Like there's a lot of great work put into that. The score is good to listen to, like I mentioned before. And there's definitely moments where I thought, you know, acting was working. It's just, it's not very consistent. Tom Hanks was consistent. Everyone else is like, well, it kind of depends on how Robert Zemeckis was feeling when he directed them that day. It's weird for a movie that's so much about life, you know, the importance of the passing of time and the shared histories and the, you know, stories that connect us all through time, through our own existences. You know, it just feels so lifeless and still very artificial at the end of the day. I don't know, man. I would not recommend you see this. It was kind of hard to pin how the other people in the theater were feeling. I was definitely the youngest one there. A lot of like, not like old, but you know, like 50s and above people were, you know, in the theater. A very like not packed, just kind of medium filled theater. And it was kind of hard to pin down how they were feeling as I was walking out. I think people were kind of like, well, you know, maybe like trying to give the, you know, pity points just because it is a Tom Hanks movie. I gotta give here a C-. I wish this was better. I was crossing my fingers extra hard, you know. I was hoping this could have been, you know, the Zemeckis movie that is good in the sea of like the recent kind of middling bad ones, but not the case, unfortunately. I will say that that one couple, the lazy boy couple, is so much fun, but it really, I don't want people to go see it just based off of that, because basically what I described to you is about all you're gonna get from them, you know? But they were a saving grace for me, at least when I was watching the movie. So some points for that, some points for the other technical elements. But yeah, for a Forrest Gump reunion, for something that they were very proud to tout in the marketing, I wish that it was, you know, at least good. But if you've seen here, leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.